Kenneka Jenkins was a true crime case that got a lot of press about 7.5 years ago. You know her better as the girl in the freezer. Kenneka left for a party on September 8th around 11:30 p.m. at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Illinois. She didn't actually get to the hotel till about 1:13 a.m. When she got there, she gave a friend a hug, and the friend noticed that she was kind of swaying back and forth. She was only seen drinking a glass of cognac. She was not seen taking any other substances other than that glass of cognac. She kind of danced to herself, and then eventually she sat in the corner by herself. She talked to her sister for the last time on the phone at 1:30 a.m., only about 17 minutes after she got to the party. At some point, she leaves the party and she goes wandering through the hotel. Now, the video I'm about to show you is her wandering through the hotel, and you'll notice something.
Video time codes appear to show Kenneka roaming the hotel for more than an hour. First, Kenneka is walking with friends. There's a time gap, and then she's later seen by herself. At one point, she stumbles out of an elevator. Later, she repeatedly hits the wall walking down.
Considering she was only seen drinking a glass of cognac, you'd wonder, why is she stumbling around like that? But her actual, after the toxicology came back, her actual blood level was 0.112, which is significantly above the legal limit of 0.08, which would suggest she had more alcohol in her system possibly. On top of that, they also found Topamax, which is used for a myriad of things, such as migraines, epilepsy, and a mood stabilizer. And together, if you use them, they interact and they heighten each other's side effects. Now, this isn't something I would necessarily consider to be a huge party drug, but as a person who has extensive history with mental illness drugs, there are a lot of mood stabilizers, such as Neurontin, that when you take them in any type of dosage that may not be appropriate for you, not necessarily a high dosage, but a dosage that is high enough for you, you can get a lot of side effects that some people could actually enjoy, and some people would find them very detrimental. For instance, one time I was on a dosage of Neurontin for my mood stabilizer, and it made me very, very up, and it was enjoyable. I've also been on a medication called Zyprexa, where I too was walking into walls, much like she was doing. And it wasn't even the fact it was a high dose, but it interacted with me and my system, and I was stumbling around like that, and I stopped taking it immediately. Now, if you put together the fact that she was taking something that very possibly was interacting with her, on top of being legally intoxicated, the two of those together could have caused a huge amount of confusion and stumbling and wobbling and disorientation. And she was very disoriented in those videos, if you noticed. She was wobbling, crashing into walls, very disoriented. You'll also notice that she is alone. There's nobody following her. There's nobody with her. There's nobody in the halls to notice her. She is simply walking around this hotel alone. Now, she went staggering by the front desk about 3:20, and the final footage of her was at 3:32, where she was walking into the kitchen, turned the corner, and she disappears from view. Unfortunately, there's no actual camera that was pointed at the fridge for whatever reason. You'd think with a fridge or a walk-in oven, as what happened in Canada, there would be a video surveillance in case a bad situation was to occur. But unfortunately, while they had lots of cameras in the kitchen, that was unused, by the way. This particular kitchen was unused. It was being rented by another restaurant in the facility, but it was not being used. It was not roped off, and it was not in any way unaccessible. She clearly walked right into that kitchen and was walking around it with no problem. It was not roped off at all. So about an hour later, one of her friends calls the mother and says, "Hey, look, we can't find her." And they were obviously very upset, and the hotel said that they would not look at the video until there was a missing persons report. And that was at 5:30 in the morning. So by 7:14, they called the police, and they said, "Oh, wait a while, she could come back," as they always do. Just wait a while, they're an adult, they'll come back. So at 12:46, they filed the report, and they go to the hotel at 1:15, and the mother and the sister are knocking on doors asking if anybody had seen her, and eventually a hotel employee called the police on them for disrupting people's service. So they finally checked the cameras, and the first check of the camera showed nothing because they were only looking at the entrances and the exits. But on further look at the video, about 10 p.m. on Saturday, they found the video of her wandering the hotel. She was actually found in the freezer by a hotel employee a little after midnight on Sunday morning, and she was actually pronounced at 12:48 a.m. She was found in the freezer, face down, one shoe off. The only mark on her body was a small cut on her foot. She had no visible wounds, nothing to give any idea of had she been accosted, had she been hit, had she been put into this freezer, did somebody do something to her? And eventually they found out in the autopsy that obviously she passed from hypothermia, but on top of that, alcohol and Topamax actually sped up her freezing to death. There was a lot of speculation. What happened? There was a rumor that went around that she was possibly taken care of by a gang. The actual party, the card ended up being fraudulent, and it belonged to this gang. And they were saying, the rumor was that she was taken care of by this gang for a possible parking ticket. But that was taken care of pretty quickly, that this was just a rumor that had went around. October 6th, 2017, it was actually finally ruled accidental. When she was not prescribed Topamax. She was not prescribed it, but it was in her system. And while a lot of people speculate that maybe somebody did something to her, maybe somebody locked her in the freezer, my worry is, how did she get the Topamax in her system, and did somebody give it to her? That is where I go with it, is why did she have this substance in her body that can do the things it did? How did she get it? Did somebody give it to her? What was the reasoning? Why was this drug that was not prescribed to her in her system? In 2018, they actually put forth a $50 million lawsuit because, according to a picture, the door had an outside lock. Turns out that wasn't the actual freezer door picture, and for whatever reason, they didn't decide to go look at the freezer. I don't know, but we don't know if there was a lock on there or if there wasn't, but they suggested that somebody had locked it and that it should have been roped off, which it absolutely should have been roped off. If it was not being used, why the freezer was turned on to begin with in a unused kitchen that was not roped off was absolutely negligent by the hotel to not rope off this area to keep a freezer running that somebody could apparently wander into. And it was settled in 2023, finally, for $10 million for neglect, for the fact that they did not rope off the kitchen, for the fact they didn't shut down this illegal party that was paid for with an illegal card, and that they didn't thoroughly check the footage. If they would have checked the footage when all of this happened, maybe they would have found her in time. But they chose not to do that. They chose to drag their feet, not look at the footage, and just, this girl could have possibly been saved. And while a lot of people do suggest foul play and the fact that she was in a freezer that may or may not have had a lock on it, what I continue to go back to is she was alone in that footage. And all the footage, she was alone. But more than that, I go back to, why did she have Topamax in her system if it was not prescribed to her? My worry is either she took it at the party and nobody's seen her do it, or somebody could have slipped it to her. Unfortunately, she ended up passing in a way that is no, I wouldn't want for anybody. And I'm glad that her family finally got some justice and held the hotel accountable.